tweak the roster in small places in order to get those results he's looking for. I do think that this year, knowing when you take into consideration what happened at the end of last year, making that Western Conference Finals run, and we see the Warriors and their core identity kind of break down with Durant leaving, with the Klay Thompson injury, and we start to see an opening in the top of the Western Conference that the Blazers now kind of have an opportunity to take advantage of. I think we might start to see them shop around those expiring contracts of Whiteside or Bazemore, potentially pairing that with someone like Zach Collins, maybe even Anthony Simons, depending on how the season is going, if the deal is right. And you look at the market and you see, at least in my mind, there are two prime targets that the Blazers should be considering. One being Blake Griffin, given everything that's going on in Detroit. He's on a big contract. They're going nowhere fast. I think that they would like to unload that to potentially expedite their rebuilding process. And ditto for Kevin Love, who's actually a Portland native himself, and has expressed some interest in potentially coming to the Blazers. So I think that if anything happens, that those would be the kind of targets the Blazers are looking for, add a big piece and really make a run here in the offseason. And I think that if there ever is an opportunity, now is definitely the time for them to take advantage of that.
Yeah, don't sleep on Bradley Beal either. Another guy who, I mean, it would be very guard heavy, but
yeah,
imagining
how many
with
cards are we going to play?
Yeah, still though, the firepower there. But at any rate, let's kind of get to our predictions here. So what we've been doing on this offseason, Pete, is we've been giving the ceilings and the floors and then looking at the over-unders as set by DraftKings. So, for you, where do you see the ceiling of this team?
So I think in terms of a ceiling, assuming that Simons ends up being, the piece that they need to fill with like Seth Curry leaving, that Bazemore fits in seamlessly, that Nurkic comes back healthy for the second half of the season. I could see this Blazers team winning 54 or 55 games given the talent level that they've got. I know that that's a tall order in the Western Conference, but I think that they've shown that they've been able to bring in new pieces quickly and get them integrated. And when you have that consistency with Dame and CJ in the backcourt leading the charge, I believe that probably would be a very, very good year for the Blazers, especially in such a competitive Western Conference this year.
Yeah, Jason, what do you think?
So, I mean, listen, I'm having this problem with every West team that we cover, with the exception of the Grizzlies and the Mavericks. I think that the ceiling for this team is right back in the Western Conference Finals, for all the reasons that Pete mentioned. It would take some upsets, though. It would take, I think, the Lakers to crumble. I think it would take the Clippers to struggle. And with the Paul George injury news that he may not be back until November, the Clippers might get off to a slow start. The division is probably top to bottom one of the best in the league, with Utah, with Denver. We'll see if Oklahoma City is going to be competitive. We'll cover them in a little bit. So I think that it would take a bit of an upset, but I do think their ceiling will be the West Finals. And, I'm not saying the finals is outside of the realm of possibility, but the way this team is currently constructed, unless they can land a Blake Griffin or Kevin Love, I think West Finals is their ceiling.
So for me, I think my only concern with getting into the West Finals here is that, unfortunately, my big kind of drawback of some of their offseason moves is I do wonder how they're going to match up with the teams they have to beat to get there. The Clippers in particular, kind of just looking forward, look like a terrible matchup for them. And likewise, the Lakers look like a really, really tough team for them to play, and as do the Rockets. And to me, those are probably the three teams that you could slot ahead of them pretty definitively right now in terms of their top tier talent. There's other teams that are really good, but I feel like for the for the Trailblazers, they could have a season where they win in the mid-50s. I could see them, as you said, Pete, winning 54, 55 games. But my concern is I'm not sure they can make it past the second round, because I don't know if they have the defense on the wing to really stop some of these guys. And if they play a team like the Clippers, I just don't know who's guarding Paul George. I don't know who's guarding Kawhi Leonard or LeBron James. And that sort of worries me. And likewise in the backcourt, I'm not even sure who will guard the James Harden or the Steph Curry should they play a Warriors or Rockets team. And I think that's, to me, kind of the biggest concern for them going forward. And kind of along those lines, Pete, I mean, where do you see the floor of this team, sort of with some of those moves? Do you feel like there's the potential for this team to, potentially struggle?
I think there's definitely the potential, right? And I think that one of the things that makes this particular year so exciting is the West is as wide open as it has been in probably 5 or 6 years. And I think, of course I'm going to defend the Blazers a little bit here, Ben, but I think that you could make that same argument about matchups across pretty much every team that you want to pit against one another amongst the top 7 teams in the Western Conference. So frankly, I think from that perspective, basketball fans are going to be in for a real treat because people are making lots of projections, but I'm not really sure that anyone can confidently say that what they are suggesting will happen will be what the final result actually is. So it'll be good. With that said, in terms of where the Blazers' floor might be, if these pieces don't integrate in the same way, if for some reason it just doesn't quite mesh in the way that Olshey and Stotts had envisioned. God forbid there's an injury with Dame or CJ, something along those lines. I think that probably 43, 44 games is probably where their floor is realistically. I don't see them going much lower than that just because I do think they have a fair amount of depth. But I do think that in a worst case scenario, probably 43, 44 games and maybe just on the outside looking in on the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm going to add on to that. I'm going to say their absolute floor is losing in the first round because I do think they're a bona fide playoff team. I mean, fewer teams can say they boast a better backcourt than what currently resides in Portland. So the West is stacked. We all know that. So I'm going to say losing in the first round. Now, Pete, we're going to get to our DraftKings odds for over-under win totals. And we've been using DraftKings so far for our division previews. This is our 4th division that we're doing. Portland is set at 47.5. I'm taking the over here. Curious to know, gentlemen, what your thoughts are.
Pete, I'll let you go first since you're a guest.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Ben. So I think I'm taking the over on that. I haven't looked at historically what DraftKings have pegged the Blazers at in terms of their over-under. I can tell you that before getting on this call, I looked at the Blazers' last 6 years of over-under for Vegas totals. They beat the over by a combined 45 games, 5 out of the 6 years. So I feel pretty good about betting on the over on the Blazers, knowing that, frankly, all you East Coasters just don't watch enough late West Coast games to know where the talent level's at.
And you know what? I'm right there with you. As much as I have some concerns about their ceiling, I think their floor is very, very high. I actually really like the moves. We didn't even get to talk about the fit of a guy like Bazemore, who I think if there's one guy in this team who could end up being more of an X factor than I think people see at the beginning of the season, I think it's a guy like Bazemore, who could end up being their kind of defensive guy against some of the better wings. I'm not sure how confident that would make me if I was a Blazers fan that I'm going to be relying on him, but I still think that having guys like Lillard, having guys like McCollum, it allows everyone else to just do what they're good at. And I think that's going to really, really improve the floor of this team. And I think it will allow some of these new role players to really shine in Portland. So I agree. I'm going with the over as well. And normally this is where we wrap, but I couldn't help myself, Pete. This week, Dame Lillard goes on a podcast and proclaims himself a better rapper than Shaquille O'Neal, which incites the big Aristotle to come back with a rap verse. And now just today, as you come on, Dame Dollar comes back, shots fired across the bow right back at Shaq. And I got to get your thoughts. Who won this rap battle, Pete? Give me an analysis of the bars between these two greats in the NBA heavyweight arena of rappers.
So this is a great NBA offseason storyline, right? We know the summer is slow. Having these rap battles certainly make things a little bit more interesting for us. I got to say, I was genuinely impressed with the bars from both individuals. Shaq really brushing off a lot of rust there because we haven't heard from him in a while. He gets some minus points because he used the "What's the Difference" beat and didn't come up with something himself, but had some fantastic zingers in there. I will say, again, I'm biased. I got to give the W here to Dame. I think he's the better overall rapper. I think he's shown that consistently across his albums. Some of the insults about, Orlando not wanting Shaq chasing Anthony Hardaway, not Simon's there. Him riding on the coattails of both Kobe and Dwayne Wade in Miami, not getting it done in Boston. You really saw no holds bar there from Dame. So again, I'm biased, but I'm going to give him the W on this one.
Yeah, I got to go with you as well. I think Shaq started off well, kind of ran out of steam partway through here, and just didn't have the stamina, which I thought was very metaphorical for the way that rap battle went through. That Dame had the range while Shaq started off strong, but kind of ran out of gas. So Pete, with that, we thank you for your time here. It is always great to have you on here, and you are welcome back anytime to talk Blazers. Anything you want to leave us with before you go?
No, I mean, I think that we can all agree that it's a fantastic time of the year. Baseball's winding down, thank God, and basketball's kicking back up. So we've got pretty much 9 months of pure bliss here, boys.
Agreed. Now, I feel bad. You're a newly married man. We said 10 minutes. We end up keeping you for a half hour, but it was well worth it. You are very good at analyzing the Blazers. We appreciate your time. Unfortunately, though, we have to kick you out now so we can finish the rest of the division. But seriously, Pete, like Ben said, you're welcome anytime, buddy. Pleasure as always. And real quick, I did get an email that the Fantasy Basketball League was restarted. Is that happening?
We might have to do it again. We have to get the numbers. Poor Pete beat me like a drum last year and really excelled throughout the year. So we're going to have to maybe up the ante and get this going again this year.
All right. Well, then I will look forward to talking crap to you in the draft, Pete, when I finally know how an auction works. But again, we appreciate the time, buddy, in all seriousness. All the best in your new marriage, and we'll talk soon.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
So Ben, this is the point of the show now where you and I have to have a conversation. Are you going to be able to handle that?
I think I'll do just fine, Jason. Let's go straight into this because, man, this has really got my juices flowing. We get all this great analysis, and now it's just you and me, mano a mano, my friend. And it's time to talk some teams that I know you were excited about. And let's start with a team that I know you like. That's the Denver Nuggets. Last year, the Nuggets had a great regular season. Kind of ended up getting a little below expectations, I think, after finishing second in the West, and then they don't make it to the Western Finals. They almost fell to the Spurs in the first round, and then it felt like they could have beaten Pete's beloved Blazers, and they fall short there. And I think a lot of people felt that was a disappointment. I mean, what do you think of this team coming into the season, Jason?
I mean, aside from the fact that they're named after some of my favorite fast food, there's a lot to like about them. When the Warriors break up, and they technically kind of did, losing Durant, Iguodala, Livingston, DeMarcus Cousins, and Klay Thompson's out for a while. So the Nuggets would be first in line, primed and ready to take over at the top of the Western Conference. Now, this was before the Lakers got Anthony Davis and before the Clippers got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. But the reason why the Nuggets are so likable is because they were built from within. I mean, you look at a Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, Nikola Jokic. They draft Bol. They get Michael Porter Jr., who we haven't seen play yet, Torrey Craig, Will Barton, Malik Beasley. I mean, their really only outside free agent that has made significant contributions is Paul Millsap, with a small argument for Mason Plumlee. And then I know you have stuff on Jeremy Grant in a couple minutes here, but this team is loaded from within. They are primed and they're ready, and they feature a big man who could potentially be the best in the NBA, Benjamin.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought as soon as you said where they were building from within, the first thing you were going to touch on is, one of the great big men of our league right now, Nikola Jokic, maybe the best passing big man that we've ever seen. He's just been incredible. And to your other point, I mean, they made one really big move in the offseason, and it's the one that made me feel a little bit more confident in them coming into the season, and that was adding Jeremy Grant, because I felt like they were a team that relied way too much on Paul Millsap last year, and that really made me nervous watching them as a team. And I think the reason why they relied on him so heavily was their lack of defense really on the perimeter. He was the one guy who could really get stops, who could be kind of sicked on their kind of the opposing team's best perimeter player, a guy who could really get stops for them. And it worries me that they